building a better world.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. Hurricane Laura made landfall in the southern U.S. state of Louisiana, and the monster Category 4 storm prompted warnings of unsurvivable ocean surges and evacuation orders for hundreds of thousands of Gulf Coast residents. New Zealand Mosque gunman Brenton Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the massacre of 51 Muslim worshippers. The white police officer who shot black 29-year-old Jacob Blake in the back, triggering a new wave of violent protests in America, was named by U.S. officials as NBA players led an unprecedented wave of sports walkouts against racism and police brutality. And later, Japan's Art Aquarium in Tokyo opens its latest goldfish exhibit. Hurricane Laura made landfall in the southern U.S. state of Louisiana, and the monster Category 4 storm prompted warnings of unsurvivable ocean surges and evacuation orders for hundreds of thousands of Gulf Coast residents. Texas Governor Greg Abbott warned Laura's power was unprecedented and urged residents to get out of harm's way. Take a look.
The hurricane is going to be quite severe, very powerful winds. This has been categorized repeatedly as an unsurvivable storm surge where it will be hitting. And that storm surge could continue inland for about 30 miles. In this storm, wind is going to be the biggest threat. Tropical storm winds are likely to occur as far north as Longview. Storm surge is also a big problem with 10 to 15 feet storm surge around the Jefferson County area. If you lose power, it's very important that you do not bring your generators inside a home. That could lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. You need to leave those generators outside of your home.
The National Hurricane Center said extremely dangerous Laura would bring winds of 150 miles per hour or 240 kilometers per hour and flash flooding to Louisiana. Television images showed heavy rain lashing the coastal city of Lake Charles shortly after the National Hurricane Center said the eye of the storm made landfall at around 1 a.m. local time. Earlier, the NHC warned that Laura could pummel the Louisiana and Texas coasts with an unsurvivable storm surge of up to 20 feet and that tornadoes could form at the southern edges of the weather system. The National Guard said it had mobilized more than 1,000 members in Texas to help with hurricane response, including 20 aircraft and more than 15 shelter teams. Among the cities potentially in the path of the eye of the storm and under mandatory evacuation orders are Beaumont and Port Arthur, Texas, which suffered heavy damage from Hurricane Harvey 3 years ago. Now, hours before Hurricane Laura is set to make landfall on the United States, the small Texan coastal town, which sits in the center of the storm's path, resembles a ghost town. Not everyone, however, decided to evacuate. Take a look.
And worse tonight, it's going to be real bad. So, and we're leaving. We don't want to go. I don't want to go, but my children want to go.
We really need to leave. I'm just worried that a house will come down on us. If not the house, other houses, because we have broken down houses down here in downtown Port Arthur, and I'm just afraid that these trees will come down or everything. We need to go.
Basically, staying back, riding it out. I've already got the house stockpiled with what I might need if got to make sure to fill the sinks and the bathtub, you know, run the toilets if we lose water and power, you know, just candles, waiting it out, you know. All we can do is, you know, hope for the best and prepare for the worst, so.
In New Orleans, devastated by Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, the historic French Quarter was empty of tourists. Sandbags were piled up in front of the doorways of colonial-style buildings, and windows were boarded up with plywood. The city remains traumatized from Katrina, which made landfall as a Category 3 storm, flooding 80% of the city and killing more than 1,800 people. Laura earlier caused flooding in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, killing at least 25 people. In Cuba, meanwhile, it caused material damage but no deaths. The Atlantic storm season, which runs through November, could be one of the busiest ever this year, with the National Hurricane Center predicting as many as 25 named storms. Laura is the 12th so far. Meanwhile, Typhoon Bavi uprooted trees as it whirled past Pyongyang on Thursday, barreling through North Korea's northwest and on into China. Take a look. Now, KCNA reported that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un chaired a meeting last Wednesday before the typhoon hit, when he laid out tasks for various departments and said preventing casualties and crop damage was crucial. South Korea's weather agency said Bavi had maximum winds of 115 kilometers per hour and was passing near Pyongyang after making landfall in a western coastal region of North Korea that is a major source of farming and fishing. The Korea Meteorological Administration warned of strong winds continuing in Seoul and the central region through the morning. Power was knocked out in 1,633 South Korean homes, about half on the southern resort island of Jeju, which was the first part of the country to be hit by the typhoon on Wednesday. Most power was restored in the morning. In other news, New Zealand Mosque gunman Brenton Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the massacre of 51 Muslim worshippers, with a judge calling his actions wicked and inhuman. As the sentence was read out, there was jubilation outside the courtroom, with crowds cheering and singing the national anthem. Take a listen.
It is difficult to look beyond the wicked nature of each murder and the pain and suffering you have caused to individual victims, to their families and loved ones. It is incumbent on the court to respond in a way that decisively rejects such vicious malevolence. It was brutal and beyond callous. Your actions were inhuman. You will now stand. On each of the 51 charges of murder, charges 1 to 51, you were sentenced to life imprisonment. I order that you serve the sentences without parole.
Tarrant, 29, retained the same impassive demeanor through the 4-day hearing as survivors and bereaved family members gave heart-wrenching testimony of their incalculable loss. Tarrant sparked global revulsion when he rampaged through 2 Christchurch mosques for 20 minutes during Friday prayers. He had admitted 51 charges of murder, 40 of attempted murder, and 1 of terrorism over the attacks after reversing an initial non-guilty plea. He is likely to be kept in isolation for his own safety at New Zealand's only maximum security prison in Auckland, where 80% of inmates are Maori or Pacific Islanders. Meanwhile, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern welcomed the life sentence for the Christchurch mosque gunman, saying that the offender achieved the opposite of what he intended. Take a look.
Back on that, they were the ones who stood in court and said that the offender achieved the opposite of what he intended, because they have come out as a community stronger. They have come out as a community supported by New Zealand. And so I think they've done the job of sharing directly exactly what happened as a consequence of this terrorist act. I think there comes probably a point where there's not, there's very few additional things that could make an act seem any more despicable than it already was. what we've seen are extra layers and details around an already horrific, despicable act. There is a certain degree, of course, that the more you learn, the more you realise just how much thought, and that in itself is pretty horrific to know, how much went into causing this devastation.
In other news, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence took center stage at the Republican convention to warn voters they won't be safe in Joe Biden's America, casting President Trump as their protector against the radical left. Now, the vice president was the keynote speaker in a parade of Trump acolytes who sought to uplift the president as an economic virtuoso and champion of conservative and pro-life values, law enforcement, and civil rights. Let's listen in.
On November 3rd, you need to ask yourself, who do you trust to rebuild this economy? A career politician who presided over the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression? Or a proven leader who created the greatest economy in the world? The choice is clear. To bring America all the way back, Joe Biden would double down on the very policies that are leading to violence in America's cities. The hard truth is, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America. And under President Trump, we will always stand with those who stand on the thin blue line, and we're not going to defund the police, not now, not ever.
Pence has served as the chair of the Trump White House's coronavirus task force, managing the federal government's response to the virus, which has been criticized for failures. The pandemic, the worst public health crisis in a century, is still raging. COVID-19 has killed more than 180,000 people and wrecked the U.S. economy, putting tens of millions of Americans out of work. Republicans have barely mentioned the coronavirus in the first 2 days of their convention program. A White House official said Pence would not shy away from speaking about the virus and the administration's work to tackle it. The official said he is proud of that work. And aside from the COVID-19, the Trump administration faces several other potential domestic crises. After months of racial unrest following the police killing of George Floyd, the city of Kenosha in the political swing state of Wisconsin was reeling on Wednesday after 2 people were shot dead in another night of violent protests. In other news, Beijing slammed Washington's tyrannical logic over the latest U.S. sanctions targeting Chinese expansionism in the South China Sea, worsening tensions between the two superpowers. Take a look.
美方因中方企业和个人参与本国相关建设而对其实施非法制裁，毫无道理。美方此举粗暴干涉了中国内政，违反国际法和国际关系基本准则，完全是霸道逻辑、强权政治。中方对此坚决反对。
In recent years, China has aggressively pursued its territorial claims in the South China Sea, building small shoals and reefs into military bases with airstrips and port facilities. Both the U.S. and Chinese militaries have recently ramped up their actions in the region, raising tensions between the two. The U.S. on Wednesday announced sanctions on 24 Chinese companies and associated unnamed officials for taking part in building artificial islands in the disputed waters. But Foreign Minister spokesman Zhao Lijian denied at this regular press briefing Thursday that the construction work had anything to do with Chinese militarization and said it was within the scope of territorial sovereignty. He said the U.S.'s words grossly interfere in China's internal affairs. It is wholly tyrannical logic and power politics. China will take firm measures, he said, to uphold the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies and individuals, unquote. The U.S. Commerce Department said the companies enabled China to construct and militarize disputed outposts in the South China Sea. The Chinese have recently conducted military exercises in the area, while the U.S. Navy has undertaken regular freedom of navigation operations to assert its rejection of Chinese sovereignty by sailing near islands that Beijing claims as its own. China's military on Tuesday accused the U.S. of deliberately flying a U-2 spy plane into a no-fly zone to disrupt live fire drills by the People's Liberation Army. In July, the United States formally declared Beijing's pursuit of territory and resources in the South China Sea as illegal, explicitly backing the territorial claims of Southeast Asian countries against China's. Now, Taiwan stands on the front lines of freedom and democracy. That is according to President Tsai Ing-wen, as Beijing clamps down on Hong Kong and ramps up military activities in the region. In a video speech to an Australian think tank, President Tsai called for like-minded countries to protect Taiwan, pitching the self-ruled democracy as a dependable ally to Western governments. Take a look.
After Hong Kong, Taiwan stands increasingly on the front lines of freedom and democracy. We certainly hope that like-minded countries will continue to work together to ensure Taiwan's security, which is in the interest of peace and stability in the region. We will continue to seek a stronger security partnership with the United States and other like-minded countries in the region, built on our shared values and common interests.
China views Taiwan as its own territory, vowing to one day seize it by force if needed, and Beijing's sweeping national security law for Hong Kong, as well as a crackdown on democracy supporters, has added to the island's alarm. Beijing has stepped up diplomatic, military, and economic pressure on Taiwan since President Tsai came to power in 2016, as she refuses to acknowledge their idea that the island is part of one China. President Tsai regards Taiwan as a de facto sovereign nation, but has resisted any formal declaration of independence, a move Beijing has long warned could spark war. It's a desperate race to save whatever they can as the wildfires in California rages on. Take a look. The wildfires, nearly 2,000 structures have already been destroyed by the historic fires sweeping across Northern California. But officials say the number could almost double before the blazes are extinguished. Daniel Berland, a spokesman for the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, said crews are now going through the many fire zones, conducting an assessment of burned structures. In a briefing, he said the count of destroyed structures is ongoing, and that the department's preliminary assessments indicate that number could rise in total to over 3,000. Since August 15, which marked the beginning of a lightning siege that has seen almost 14,000 lightning strikes statewide, crews have contended with more than 700 new wildfires that have charred more than 1.3 million acres. However, despite the devastation, officials are continuing to report promising progress in battles against the firestorm. Governor Gavin Newsom added Wednesday that the state is putting every single asset they possibly can, deploying every conceivable resource to battle these historic wildfires. The third largest fire in state history, the LNU Lightning Complex, has charred 360,000 acres and 33% contained as of Wednesday evening. In the afternoon, officials reduced an evacuation order in Napa County to a warning. Later in the evening, however, they issued a new evacuation order for Yolo County and evacuation warnings for parts of Yolo and Lake counties. There have been 7 fire-related fatalities, including 5 people who died in the LNU Lightning Complex fire, 3 in Napa County and 2 in Solano County, and 1 in the CZU Lightning Complex fire. A pilot also died in a helicopter crash in Fresno County while on a water-dropping mission for the Hills fire. And staying in the U.S., the white police officer who shot black 29-year-old Jacob Blake in the back triggering a new wave of violent protests in America, was named by U.S. officials on Wednesday as NBA players led an unprecedented wave of sports walkouts against racism and police brutality. Take a look. Anger and grief have built since Sunday when a 7-year veteran of the police force in Kenosha, Wisconsin, shot Blake 7 times at point-blank range while 3 of his children watched in the Midwestern city. The U.S. Department of Justice announced late Wednesday it was opening a civil rights investigation into Blake's shooting. On Wednesday, the Wisconsin Department of Justice gave its first official account of Blake's shooting, saying he had a knife in his possession when Officer Rustin Shesky fired his gun into his back. It wasn't clear from the statement if the knife recovered from inside the car was in Blake's hands when he was shot or at any other point during the altercation. He survived but may be paralyzed for life. Officers were sent to a residence in Kenosha following a domestic disturbance, and during the incident attempted to arrest Blake, unsuccessfully tasering him. The statement said Mr. Blake walked around his vehicle, opened the driver's side door, and leaned forward while holding onto Mr. Blake's shirt. Officer Rustin Shesky fired his service weapon 7 times, and Officer Shesky fired the weapon into Mr. Blake's back. Subsequently, the statement said agents recovered a knife from the driver's side floorboard of Mr. Blake's vehicle. Wow. Blake's shooting comes just 3 months after another African-American man, George Floyd, suffocated beneath the knee of a white officer in Minneapolis, igniting the most widespread civil unrest in the country in decades. The Milwaukee Bucks led a historic sporting boycott on Wednesday over the U.S. police shooting of a black man, forcing the NBA to halt its playoff schedule and prompting a wave of walkouts across multiple sports. The NBA postponed its entire slate of Wednesday fixtures after the Bucks refused to play Game 5 of their Eastern Conference first-round series against the Orlando Magic in protest over the shooting of African-American man Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin on Sunday. Now, Blake was seriously injured after being shot point-blank in the back 7 times by police officers in a confrontation captured on video. The Bucks' no-show prompted the NBA to scrap 2 other games scheduled for Wednesday. Houston's clash with Oklahoma City Thunder and the Los Angeles Lakers match up with the Portland Trail Blazers. At an emergency meeting of NBA teams in Florida late Wednesday, the crisis threatened to put the entire season in jeopardy, with LeBron James' Los Angeles Lakers and Los Angeles Clippers both voting to abandon the season. All other teams voted to continue. It wasn't immediately clear whether the Lakers and Clippers would continue the season as scheduled. A walkout by 2 of the NBA's strongest teams and title contenders, as well as its biggest star, would deal a devastating blow to the credibility of the season. The NBA's Board of Governors is meeting on Thursday to address player concerns. Our team wants to continue to fight for racial justice, for social justice, for the end of excessive use of force by police. That is according to Milwaukee Bucks head coach Mike Budenholzer. He tells this to reporters before his team decided to boycott their playoff game with the Orlando Magic following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Take a look.
Our team has had lots of conversations and has a high level of concern and wants to continue to fight for racial justice, for social justice, for the end of excessive use of force by police. They want to be part of the solution. They want to help. They want justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a lot of things that are way bigger than basketball going on. Like, you want to be able to play. You want to be able to, because at the end of the day, we know that basketball brings something to people, but at the same time, just seeing that happening every day, man, like it's tough. It's tough. It hurts. And
yeah, there's no playbook, but I think, like, again, first and foremost, you care about the people, and that's why you just support everybody with what, hearing people and listening and whatever emotions that each person individually feels. You're there to.
Are great, but apparently, things not really changing. And, we don't expect it to change overnight, but, when it's just that obvious and still got, people of color getting shot, cold-blooded like 7 times, while being unarmed, it's makes us wonder like if there's really going to be some change.
Eagle News will be right back.
The Bulacan Bulk Water Project is a treatment facility that will provide bulk water to the 24 municipalities of Bulacan to meet the increasing water demand of its residents. Through concessionaire, SMC Infrastructure also initiated the significant improvements of the Manila North Harbor Port, the country's busiest port.
Hello there, I'm Alfred, and I'm a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, batch of 2008 in New Era University. I'm currently working as an operations analyst in Autodesk.
Hi, I'm Earl Escanio, and I graduated with Bachelor of Science major in Computer Science in 2010. I am a consultant at Trinity Consulting, LLC.
Hi, I'm Ivy Macapagal, Bachelor's of Computer Science graduate, year 2010. I'm currently working as a cybersecurity analyst in one of the largest telcos here in New Zealand, Coast Park, NZ.
I'm Frank David Riego, a BS Computer Science graduate here in 2015. As a legal analyst, I am tasked to read US cases, specifically civil torts cases.
I am Melanie Rico Hermosity, a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science graduate, year 2006.
I'm currently a software quality assurance engineer at FBI Systems here in Maryland, United States.
Hi, I'm Renzo Cruz. I'm a graduate of BS Computer Science, year 2012. I'm currently working abroad, and I'm working as a senior cybersecurity consultant who specializes in digital forensics and incident response. And I am part of a national security in one of the countries here in the Middle East.
I am inviting everyone to study at New Era University to legit, true grit.
Be brilliant in the new era.
Study now at New Era University.
Excellence,
discipline,
service to humanity.
France's Prime Minister on Thursday announced face masks will become compulsory throughout Paris, expressing concern over an undeniable trend of expanding coronavirus infection in the country. Jean Castex said 19 more departments have been added to a map with red zones of active virus circulation, meaning 21 of France's 94 departments are classified as such. Take a look.
Gironde comme Paris sont classés dans les départements de circulation active du virus, comme je l'ai indiqué tout à l'heure. Cela va entraîner des conséquences. Cela a entraîné à Marseille, à Paris. J'ai indiqué que le préfet, après concertation avec la maire, va étendre le port du masque dans l'ensemble de la capitale. Et la question, évidemment, se pose pour la petite couronne, compte tenu des circulations entre ces territoires.
Official figures released on Wednesday showed more than 5,400 confirmed new cases in just 24 hours. With admissions to hospital and intensive care units on the rise, there was an undeniable resurgence of the COVID-19 epidemic throughout France. Castex told a press conference with an incidence rate of 39 positive tests per 100,000 of the population, 4 times the level of a month ago and rising among all age groups. The positivity rate, the percentage of tests that come back positive, was up from 1% in May to 3.7% today, and the so-called R rate of viral transmission has risen to 1.4 nationwide, meaning 10 infected people are infecting 14 others on average. More than 800 coronavirus patients are being admitted to hospital every week on average, up from 506 weeks ago, according to the Prime Minister. Mr. Castex announced that Paris, one of the 21 zones with active virus circulation, will make face masks compulsory throughout the city. He didn't give a date. The government would do everything in its power to avoid issuing new nationwide stay-at-home orders, the Premier added, but the possibility could not be excluded entirely, and localized confinements may be on the cards. Germany plans to keep fans out of stadiums until at least the end of the year and get tougher on mask wearing to combat a worrying rise in coronavirus infections. Under a draft seen by AFP on Thursday, Chancellor Angela Merkel is holding talks with the leaders of Germany's 16 federal states to officially agree a package of new measures which will apply nationwide. The talks are aimed at creating a more coherent approach to the pandemic after daily infection numbers in recent weeks soared to highs not seen since April. The new regulations will include a minimum fine of 50 euros for anyone caught without a face mask in places where wearing one is compulsory, such as in shops and on public transport. Germany also plans to extend a ban on large events from the end of October until December 31st. It'll apply to everything from festivals and concerts to large sporting events with spectators. The decision deals a blow to German football clubs that had been hoping to welcome supporters back into stadiums this autumn. And actor Antonio Banderas recovers from the coronavirus, plus the latest situation in Spain. Here's Beverly Madrid joining us live from Spain. Hello, Beverly.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, Bev.
Yes. The Spanish actor Antonio Banderas said Tuesday that he was cured of the coronavirus, which he had contracted several weeks ago. The actor, known for his roles in films like The Mask of Zorro and Philadelphia, said on Twitter he had kept to a disciplined confinement for 21 days since learning he was infected. He publicly announced he had tested positive on his 60th birthday on August 10. At the time, he said that he had been feeling relatively well, just a bit more tired than usual. Banderas did not reveal where he had spent his 3-week in quarantine. He has previously suffered a heart attack at a home he owns in Britain. Describing himself Tuesday as cured, he added that my thoughts go to those who weren't as fortunate as me and to those who suffered more than I did. I also wish strength to the ones who are in the middle of the fight, Banderas said. In January, the actor received his first Oscar nomination for his role in Spanish director Pedro Almodóvar's Pain and Glory, in which he plays a film director in decline who reflects on his life. In the end, the award for Best Actor in a Leading Role went to Hollywood actor Joaquin Phoenix. Meanwhile, Alma, an update on the coronavirus situation here. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said it will call in the army to try to help curb the spread of the coronavirus as parts of Europe and Asia battle new surges, while data from the UN Health Agency suggested the pace of transmission was easing in many parts of the world. One of the worst affected countries in Europe Spain is to use 2,000 soldiers trained in tracking to help regions identify those who have been exposed to infected people. Infections have risen sharply since Spain lifted a 3-month state of emergency and lockdown in late June, but daily deaths have been much lower than in March to May. Reporting back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Beverly, for your report there in Spain. You stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Reporting
Yes,
from
Bev.
Barcelona, Spain, I'm Beverly Hadley, who lives in Spain time.
Thank you, Bev. Meanwhile, South Korea's parliament was shut down on Thursday and a group of lawmakers were in self-quarantine as the country recorded more than 400 new coronavirus infections. Take a look. Now, the South endured one of the worst early outbreaks of COVID-19 outside mainland China before bringing it broadly under control with extensive tracing and testing. But it's now battling several clusters, mostly linked to Protestant churches. Thursday's 441 new cases were mostly in the Greater Seoul area and are the latest in a series of near 6-month highs after several weeks with numbers generally in the 30s and 40s. The National Assembly was closed after a photojournalist who covered a ruling party meeting on Wednesday was later confirmed to have contracted COVID-19. The result prompted more than 10 top Democrats, including the party chairman and its parliamentary leader, to undergo tests and go into self-isolation. The parliamentary shutdown is the second over coronavirus concerns after a February closure when an attendee at an event tested positive. Thursday's infection numbers were the 14th consecutive day of triple-digit increases and brought the country's total to 18,706. EU Trade Commissioner Phil Hogan, a key figure in Brexit talks and one of the bloc's most senior officials, resigned on Wednesday after a week of pressure over a breach of coronavirus guidelines. Hogan, 60 years old, tendered his resignation to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as the row rumbled on, and strong indications from the Irish government he should fall on his sword. Take a look.
Last night, Phil Hogan submitted his resignation from the post as Trade Commissioner. I respect this. I am very grateful to Phil Hogan for his tireless and successful work as a commissioner and as a member of the college.
Now, his departure leaves von der Leyen in a dilemma, with Brexit talks with Britain deadlocked and a December deadline looming, and no guarantee for Ireland it will retain the powerful position. Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin's administration has said on Tuesday that Hogan flouted a trio of coronavirus guidelines during a recent trip home from Brussels. It said Hogan, propelled to Trade Commissioner in 2019 as the EU was in the throes of trade battles with the US and tensions with China, broke a 14-day quarantine after arriving in Ireland and failed to limit his travel in a county in the midst of a localized lockdown. He also attended a parliamentary golf club dinner on August 19 in breach of coronavirus restrictions on social gathering numbers announced just 24 hours earlier in a bid to curb a surge in cases. The sporting evening was attended by around 80 diners, including a cabinet minister, a Supreme Court judge, and lawmakers from Ireland's upper and lower houses of parliament. It is now being investigated by police and has prompted a series of high-level resignations in Irish politics, including Agriculture Minister Dara Cagliari and Deputy Chair of the Upper House of Parliament, Jerry Buttimer. Meanwhile, 10 members of India's dwindling Great Andamanese tribe have tested positive for coronavirus, according to officials, fueling concerns about the safety of the group and other indigenous people in the remote archipelago. 6 of the 10 have recovered and are in home quarantine, according to officials, while the rest are undergoing treatment at a local hospital. Just over 50 Great Andamanese people survive today and live on the tiny strait island where the Indian government looks after their food and shelter. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands, a chain in the Indian Ocean with a population of some 400,000, has reported 2,268 coronavirus cases so far, with 37 deaths. Eagle News will be right back.
The search for the best continues. Tagi sa Nagaling Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. If you are 21 to 59 years old and have what it takes to be the next Tagi sa Nagaling Grand Winner as a solo performer, duet, trio, band, or grouped act, submit your audition entries now. Just follow these guidelines. To submit audition entries for the singing category, contact Nikki at 0977-651-9504. This is your chance to be Tagi sa Nangaling's grand winner and win 2 million pesos. For more details and updates, visit and like the Tagi sa Nangaling Facebook page. What are you waiting for? Join now!
Japanese women with artificial legs trot the catwalk in a show called Amputee Venus, raising funds for medical workers during the pandemic. The models include Paralympic athletes who hope to set the mood for the international sports event postponed until next year. Take a look. Meanwhile, Japan's Art Aquarium in Tokyo opened its latest goldfish exhibit, where thousands of colorful creatures splashed in art forms designed by Hidetomo Kimura. Some 30,000 fish, including koi carp, are on display in everything from traditional fish bowls to columns of water tanks. Okay, before I go, hello to Sister Baby and Brother Rudy Celestial and Baby Fenina Alexis. Happy watching po. And special shout out to Brother Willen Regalado. Hello po. And Brother Sidney Santos in Canada. And Brother Sonny Salanga in Canada also. Thank you for watching po. Before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live at interesting times.
This program was brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.